Well, welcome, friends, to the Healthy Christian Leader program. And it's great to have you here again. And I'm with my guest this morning, Jay Guptill. Jay is a pastor for how many years now, Jay? Had you pastored?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm in year 39 going on to 40. So,
40 years of ministry. And for pastoral ministry, you had a counseling background prior to going into. Tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, well, actually, the counseling degree came after being in ministry. In one of the seasons or assignments while I was in Indiana, I was able to take a master's in counseling from Indiana Wesleyan University. So that was in the late 90s into early 2000. So I was able to have that as part of my toolkit, I guess, so to speak, of offering ministry but support to others. And over the last couple of years, have reawakened the counseling approach. I am licensed with the Nova Scotia College of Counseling Therapists, also under the Canadian Counseling and Psychotherapy Association, and all of that fits into the realm of the counseling coaching that I am able to provide. But I bring, of course, all those years of ministry and kind of get the realities of what it is to be a pastor and all of that. So I just kind of blend those together, and hopefully it's a help and encouragement to people. So
Yeah, no, I know that it is, and I've heard so many people share what a blessing it has been. Your last seasons of work, sowing into the health of leaders through your work is an amazing thing.
yeah, well, we're pleased. We're pleased. My wife and I started 2 years ago what is called Made for More Ministries. And so she is more on the coaching side. I'm on the counseling side, but we have also done hybrid, meaning we have worked with individuals and mostly couples where the two of us can work with another couple or a group of couples with whatever might be happening that they need encouragement or empowerment. And so that's been something that's been a really fun journey because, of course, she has had many years of ministry experience too. So, yeah,
Yes,
so we get to bring all of that to the table, I guess.
that's pretty exciting. And people can connect with you at Made for More Ministries,
Yeah, dot
is
.ca.
it?
Made for more
Dots.
ministries dot .ca. Correct.
That's so awesome. Well, let's begin with our first question, Jay, that we are going to chat about. Being a church leader often includes a significant emotional investment in others. We're constantly giving. And how can such a work impact a leader's emotional well being?
Yeah, well, that's a great question that certainly is very specific to each leader. I don't think there's a cookie cutter answer that just says everybody can do these exact same things and it's going to renew or keep their heart and emotions, fresh and alive. Some of it is discerning about ourselves. There would be some leaders who are very much I need to be around people. I'm a very relational person. I get a lot of encouragement by interacting with others. There could be other leaders who are like, I prefer to be alone. I need some alone
Mm.
time. I need to refresh getting away from people. So I think a lot of it has to do with our own self-awareness. How are we wired? And in what ways do we know our tank can be filled and keep being refilled? So I think a lot of it just has to do with not how do we look at others and how are we comparing ourselves to other people, but how do we best know ourselves and what
Mm.
we need to stay well. Um, like there's going to be times when there are going to be demands. I mean, there's just no other way around it. I mean, we don't plan for someone dying and having to do the funeral and all that goes with that from an emotional perspective. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it can be a person that we are very close to, say in our congregation, that it impacts us as much as it does anybody else, and we feel the loss. And that can be very, very challenging, but we can't plan for that. We
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to plan for that. there can be other times when, I mean, you celebrate somebody's good experience, their retirement, their new birth, their child that comes into their home. I mean, those are positives and things that, man, we're all like, rooting people on and applauding and cheering that on, and that can lift our spirits too. But there's so many variables that I find in ministry, that things that we can plan for, things that we have to adjust. So we have to learn how to be flexible with things so that it does not completely wipe us out, and drain our tank, so to speak. Even though we're not on the topic, but I think it's just something as well, just to add in. Whenever
Hmm.
there's a tough meeting where decisions were made, and it can be very, maybe it wasn't go in the direction we wanted, or another big one for pastors is a family in the church who has been very integral to the life of the church all of a sudden decides we're going to go to another church, and we
Hmm.
feel the loss and we feel the pain of, oh my goodness, like that's hard for us, right? So
Hmm.
those are kind of some of the realities that we all can face by times. So if we're going to make sure we take care of ourselves to keep our emotional tank full, uh,
Hmm.
we're going to have to do our own self-directed care by times. We're going to have to get away. We're going to have to make sure we're not just being dependent on what's all going on outside of us. How do we keep enriched ourselves? And we'll maybe dive into more of that as we talk today, but I think that's going to have to be, we can't be selfish to put the mask on ourselves and say, I need to do my own spiritual first aid,
No, I like that.
to do
I
that in a way that's going to be helpful.
Yeah, and I appreciate very much how you broke it down to really the how introverts and extroverts really, some recharge with people, others are drained by people. But then aside from that element of life, there's really the intensity of the issues we're walking through and how draining they are. And whether that's from a counseling, people walking them through their journey in life, or whether it's a leadership demand where the stress levels are higher. That's good. That's really good. How can overgiving from one's emotional energy contribute to experiences of burnout? And what can burnout look like?
There, one of the realities for leaders and for pastors, one of those challenges can be um, around the topic of people pleasing, which can show up as a pastor leader. I can be over functioning, which means I'm taking on the responsibility for other people in their life. And so if I'm not careful, I'll get into the rescue mode of making sure, things go right, because I don't want people to feel bad about me. I don't want people to reject me. I don't want people to have any of these kinds of responses to who I am as a leader. So I'm rescuing. I'm keeping people pleased by maybe not addressing the real issues that are before us. So that can be a real challenge for leaders in any area of life, but especially in the life of a church. So therefore, if what I'm doing is I'm over functioning,
Hmm.
I'm carrying too much responsibility for the life of the church. If the church is going well, man, I feel like I'm quite a hero.
Hmm.
If things are not going so well, then my goodness, like I can start to
Hmm.
feel the burden or the overwhelm or the ways in which it is consuming my thoughts and draining my tank, which then obviously that left alone without being addressed is going to lead us to being more and more depleted, less and less energy. And then all of a sudden we're like, man, I'm exhausted. Like
Hmm.
I'm feeling strained, and I don't know how to get out of this. And obviously we don't want people to go to inappropriate things that are going to try and give them pleasure or give them satisfaction. That's not helpful. But if I'm not careful, man, if I'm not taking care of myself emotionally, I might find myself with a really empty tank. And that's where burnout begins to easily set in, right? And so yeah, we have to pay attention to, okay, how am I seeing my role? And am I trying to, rescue people, or am I over functioning in how I'm pastoring? And therefore, that's something we all have to, and maybe that's where a little deeper dive sometimes can be helpful. Okay, what are my motivations? Why am I doing this? And what do I need to pay attention to so that I don't find myself being more and more depleted and then risk getting into some potential areas where I choose things that are not going to be healthy for me, because that's just I got to have something in my tank, and then I'll go to something inappropriate.
Right.
I think
And
that can be a real danger for us.
yes, it's almost like trying to, find Eden again. I can't remember the author of the book just at the moment that I was reading a year or two ago, but he talked about, when we become Eldridge, uh, he talked about uh, when, you get drained to the degree that we're significantly depleted, we're looking for that Eden experience again, subconsciously, where we're trying to get back to a place where there are new, light, fresh, exciting escape kind of scenarios, and we choose all kinds of things to escape that pleasure, and which can be very harmful. Um, so really, when leaders are dealing with those um, desires to escape, it's what you're saying is, hey, these are warning signs. You let's just check the how we're doing and reevaluate, make adjustments, and fill the tank in healthier ways.
Yeah. Well, and with that too, there might be times, and I experienced this myself, where it wasn't like I was necessarily going in inappropriate ways, but I found that my concentration and my focus was getting so distracted that there was a season I remember, like I would be kind of sitting at my office working on something, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, I've been daydreaming for a while. And
Right.
I'm like, what's going on? And I realized I had some depressive mood going on inside of me that I wasn't as fully aware as I needed to be. But in those moments, I was like, something I don't feel 100% on, or myself. And so it might be that I'm not necessarily going to other things, but it's just again trying to assess how am I doing in my well-being. And there are some good assessment tools to be able to look into that. How is my well-being? And are there things that I'm distracted or not as healthy with? And if so, those are times to go, let me do something about that, not just go into a blame shame kind of cycle, but let me get help, let me get encouragement, let me seek out and reach out to people that I can find the encouragement that I need at this season of my life.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I know I found myself in a period of time when I was very drained, going to scrolling, and somehow just scrolling YouTube channels, there was just this escape, and I didn't realize that I'm really getting dopamine hits, and and I was actually seeking to restore something that was depleted, but it wasn't a healthy way to do it. And so we all find some people escape into porn, and some scrolling, and some uh, daydreaming, and all kinds of different things. So that's an excellent point. Is it reasonable for a church leader to create emotional boundaries with those they serve? And if so, what does that look like, Jay?
Yeah, I would not only say it's reasonable, it is essential.
Yeah,
It's
um,
it's
good.
good.
there has to be a point where leaders know the realities of ministry life and how it can be draining. Uh,
Hmm.
as I've looked at over the years of my ministry career and those who were before me and the way it is now, and I don't want this to sound like a downplay, like, oh, poor us in our generation. Uh, there can be, though, an expectation that people have on pastors that you're supposed to be an expert in everything, an
Right.
Right,
expert in vision, an expert in preaching, an expert
right.
in vision casting, an expert in finance, an expert in counseling. And it's like, hold it, that's not reasonable.
Hmm.
That's not fair to anybody that they have to be set on a pedestal to be all of these things to all people.
Hmm.
Um, maybe ministry was a little more straightforward many years ago. I got to preach Sunday morning. I got to preach Sunday night. I got to have a Bible study Wednesday night. I got to visit the flock. I've got to take care of weddings and funerals. And maybe it was much more scripted. That doesn't mean it wasn't demanding, but maybe there wasn't the same level of expectations of you've got to be all things to all people. So there comes a point where we have got to, as leaders, say, who is my first ministry? You know,
Hmm.
is it to the church? Or what about my marriage and my home if I am married and I have family? And who's my priority? Well, God first, will say,
Yes.
then my marriage and my family need to have a much higher place than many leaders place in their lives. So, a practical way I remember hearing years ago, which I have had to use by times, um, when say I have a family night, it's on my calendar, and then I get a call from somebody who's in crisis.
Hmm.
They're like, I need to see you now, or you need to come over now. And it's like, okay, so now I'm torn with, do I respond to the person or do I commit to my family, which I have on my calendar? Well, if you have to evaluate what's the crisis. If we're talking about their house is burned down, their spouse is in the hospital from a car accident, there's been a death, that's a level that requires an adjustment.
Hmm.
But if they've been in marital issues or family issues for a long time, and then all of a sudden tonight it's really bad.
Right.
Fortunately, it's not going to get resolved because I went over to their house tonight
Yeah.
and met with them. I will say, I care for you. I think this is obviously very challenging. I already have a commitment. We don't have to say, I'm spending time with my family. I already have a commitment and I'm not able to make it this evening, but I'd be very happy to meet with you tomorrow or when we can find a time this week. You're honoring the person by finding a time for them, but you're not getting so pulled into their drama that you overlook your family. We need to have those honest conversations with our leadership to be able to say, hey, let's be reasonable. Let's find the happy expectations that we all can feel like I'm bringing the best of who I am based on caring for myself, but I'm also giving leadership as pastor in a way that's going to be fair and reasonable to the congregation. So I think that does need to be a conversation we have so that there's not these um, unexpressed expectations. That happens way too often. Well, the pastor's not doing this. The pastor's not doing that. Well, is that in the pastor's portfolio or their job description, or is that just what you think the pastor should do? Uh,
Hmm.
if the leaders know, then the leaders have to then talk to one another in the congregation to go, well, that's not part of his responsibilities, to do this or to do that. So I think there's way too many times we haven't actually had the conversation, and there's all these unexpressed expectations that people have that are just not reasonable. So I think it's essential we do have the conversation and we have done what we can to make sure we take care of ourselves, but we're also providing good leadership in the life of the church.
Now that's so good, Jay. And obviously, all of that requires self-awareness and just being monitoring yourself all the time. And earlier we talked about those signals of when we're really drained. Are there any smaller signals that might, that aren't necessarily flashing red, but that might be peaking between green and amber kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there, I mean, again, this may be situate or kind of per person. Um, I would say I'll just speak for myself. When there are times that I'm not as interested in being with people and I'd rather pull away, that's a signal for me. That's a flag that says, okay, why am I kind of feeling a distance from people that I don't want to be with people? That should be something I pay attention to, right?
Hmm.
Another signal would be our own body. What's our body saying to us? Am I having headaches? Am I not sleeping well? Am I having an upset stomach? Do I have more aches and pains than I've normally have had? Those are signals that your body is talking to us to say, hey, something else is going on here because this is
Hmm.
not the way you normally are feeling.
Hmm.
I think those are good things. If we're hearing our spouse or our children say things to us that are like, wow, you seem very short, or why are you so mean? Or why are you doing things that you don't want to be with us? I think those are signals. So I think
Hmm.
all of us have to be open to hearing and thinking about what are the things that are showing up all of a sudden, and what do we need to do to pay attention to that? So those would be some that come to mind right away.
No, that's so good. And I know one for my own life is when I am not looking forward to going to work, and it may be unique to me. The time when I'm not looking forward to going to work, because most of the time I do, I find that, hey, that's a really good signal that it's time to uh, gain more rest or create more break or balance. Um, so, how can a leader invite the Holy Spirit into this process of discerning their boundaries?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's a great question that comes from a number of different angles. One would be, uh, where am I at with my own personal devotional, uh, daily Sabbath kinds of rhythms? Because we won't be hearing from the Holy Spirit if we're so busy and
Hmm.
so preoccupied with life and ministry that we don't have time to have our own spiritual rhythms. Because we hear the Holy Spirit when we are in the Word, when we're inviting God to reveal things to us, our listening and attentiveness goes up. Then, if we're so busy, we are just like, I don't have time for that, right? Or
Hmm.
that becomes a secondary, or it's like crumbs. So that's going to be, I think, a key part of how are we hearing from the Holy Spirit. But I also think sometimes we battle with our own thoughts to the point that, is this the Holy Spirit or is this me? And I think that's where it's good to have people in your life that you trust, that you can go to, and you can have another person give their
Hmm.
wisdom, give their insights, listen to you, and that you're open to hearing from them. So that could be a trusted colleague or friend in ministry that you go, hey, can we grab a coffee? I just need to talk. And will you be open and honest with me about what you're seeing or hearing? Maybe it will require or take another step to say, I'm going to talk to a coach or a counselor or a mentor that can give me insight. So I think the
Hmm.
Holy Spirit works, of course, as we are in His Word and we're really listening, but He also works from the counsel of many.
Hmm.
And I think if we're open to how God can speak to us, that is a part of the journey. And my goodness, don't we all need people in our lives? I mean, if we say,
Hmm.
I can do this alone, I'm on my own, just leave me alone. That's another signal that is
Yes.
like, okay, hold it. I'm not actually initiating or intentionally going after my own enrichment, which definitely part of that comes from the counsel of others and the wisdom of others. So I think the Holy Spirit will work through our personal stuff, but he'll also work through the working it out with other people, and getting the support we need. So that would be, I guess, part of how I would encourage people to say, you know what, talk to somebody, get some insight, see what God is saying in that. And, there's, of course, a whole new reality of spiritual direction that a lot of people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that's a brand new thing. There's always been people who have helped others hear the Holy Spirit in whatever assignment or discernment or next step that they're going to take. But hey, if you just say, "I got this," maybe we're getting a little too prideful about I can handle stuff, where we really do need to reach out to someone else to be able to hear the voice of God and to know how the Holy Spirit can enrich our soul.
Mm. Jay, we've got about 45 seconds or so left. What are just some of your closing thoughts that you would like to lay with people that are important to this conversation?
Yeah,
Or
I would
highlight?
just say, you know what, be intentional. Uh, like so many times in life, life comes at us. And if we let life come at us and take over, then we're not taking the agency that God has given us. So my word of intentional is I have to lean into this. I have to step into this. I have to make the call. I have to start something new, and I'm going to go after it so that I know that my soul is staying fresh and alive as much as is possible within me. God always wants it, and I think he's asking us to step into it. I'm hoping that that will be an encouragement that, okay, if you know that right now I'm struggling, then reach out, talk to somebody, find the help you need, and let's see what we can do to help encourage one another on the journey.
So good, so good. Jay Guptill, friends, madeformoreministries.ca. Jay, it's been such a blessing to have you here in this conversation today. And we're going to look forward to connecting again in the future online and hearing more. So we'll see you next time on The Healthy Christian Leader. Well, thanks for joining this conversation. I trust that you were encouraged and challenged by the stories and experiences that were shared today. Would you join us next week? You can find new episodes weekly in video form on the Aaron Ministries YouTube page and in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. Aaron Ministries is an interdenominational network of friends in ministry with a mission to foster healthy Christian leadership. Check out our website, aaronministries.com, for more information and resources, and on how you can donate to our ministry and potentially start a healthy Christian leader gathering in your area. Until we meet again, may you experience the Lord's blessing, grace, and peace. I'll see you next week.